when I looked through the pathways and saw that in level 2, my first assignment is to dig into leadership styles. And I was pretty curious about that because I'm like, I wonder precisely what does the term leadership style refer to? So being the hardcore academic researcher that I am, I typed it into my Google. And what I found was that I got 23.3 million hits on leadership styles. Not a small amount of information out there. Of course, that is only outdone by if you type in leadership, which then comes up with slightly more than 35 million hits. So what is leadership style? And when I dug into it a little more, what I was finding is that it actually isn't a new concept at all, what we would suspect, because leadership's been discussed probably since the event of time and people. But leadership style in and of itself was first coined in terms of a term and with actually 3 original styles by Lewin in the 1930s. Now since that, it's evolved, it's morphed, and now different authors and organizations have anywhere from 5 to 12 defined leadership styles, depending on which article you read or which course you take. What I found in the next step is that I was going to have to take an assessment. And as someone that has probably in her career been exposed to almost every personality, behavior, or leadership assessment known to the first world, I may have rolled my eyes, maybe. And the thought that crossed my plane of consciousness was, seriously, an assessment? But then I thought, now really, you teach this stuff. This is not the proper attitude for this assignment. So I stepped back and I thought, get it together. You know you'll learn something. You always learn something. So I dug in and hit the tab so that I could get into the assessment. And I read the first question. Hoping that it was facultative on the first question, I moved on to the second question without answering it. Because at this point, this is how I felt. Flexum is probably the best word. Because as I was reading these questions, the struggle I had was that I would read the question and it would ask you to respond in how you would behave. What would your style be? But they didn't give you a scenario. It was just a question. And I'm thinking, well, it depends. What kind of group are we dealing with? Who am I leading? What's the makeup of the group? What's the scenario? I mean, is it a long-term project? Is it a crisis? Do we know what the outcomes desired are? I mean, all these things are kind of floating through my head. And as I kept going through it and got to questions 3, 4, I'm like, okay, so you have to put yourself in a position that you can answer these questions. So what would the scenario be? Well, let's go best case scenario. Best case scenario is that I've got a highly functioning team and we're all really clear on what all the desired outcomes are. Pretty much utopia. And since, as I'm sure you can agree with me, that's a situation we deal with every day, it was a really logical approach to answering these questions on how would I behave from a leadership style. So then I kept going through the questions and thinking, well, but that's probably not going to happen. So what would I do? And what is the scenario? And I struggled through the 10 questions. I mean, this took a long time for 10 questions that should not have taken a lot of time. Because I kept fighting with myself internally. It was a real struggle. But then I started thinking about it, and I thought, okay, well, the best part of this is that the cardinal rule of leadership is know thyself first. Because without understanding who we are as individuals, without being really centered in an understanding of what our core values are, and how do we really want to help people, we can't move forward. And we certainly can't be open to the input of others and the diversity of others and what they can contribute to the project or the team. So with that, I hit submit. and I got my assessment back. And what you get back in your assessment is numbers next to each of these 8 leadership styles that Toastmasters uses. Now, remember all the struggle and me going back and forth with, well, how would I respond and what would my behavior be? It wasn't a big surprise that of the 8, 5 of them came back with either the same number or within a point of each other on how would my style be. There was definitely a bottom. I am not someone that normally will refer to a leadership style of bureaucratic. I'm not a huge rule follower, and I'm just not that type of person, and I don't think other people appreciate to be, so that was my bottom, and that didn't surprise me a lot. So my question was, what did you learn from this? And what I learned was that the struggle in the beginning was real for a reason. What I learned was that in actuality, you need to be adaptable and flexible. Because leadership style is very much like golf. You don't tee off with a putter. A putter is not going to get you length, nor will bureaucratic behavior with high-functioning people that know what they're doing. And you certainly aren't going to chip onto the green with your driver when you have a crisis situation and you think that you're going to be democratic and ask for everyone's input. So what I learned is that it depends is the correct answer of which leadership style is appropriate. But in the end, be you. Because unless you know what your core is and how you want to help people, your authenticity will not be there, and people will see that and not respond to it well. So pick your leadership style by being you. Thank you, madam.